Now, anybody who spent any amount of time in Thailand realizes that, you know, it's just a totally different country, you know, totally different sights, sounds, smells, and as regards many things, just a totally different outlook, totally different culture. And, you know, and sometimes like these differences are good, they're refreshing, you know, sometimes they're just really annoying, you know. But one thing's for sure is that, you know, if you're kind of like one of those emotionally reactive type people, it can be a real roller coaster. You can be real up and down, you know. I mean, it can at times, you know, it can nearly drive you crazy. So what I'm going to do today is just sort of discuss some of those differences that I've noticed. You know, it's by no means a conclusive list, you know. It's just things that you know, that have come to mind while I had the idea of this video. Now, I think one thing that almost anybody who spent any time here loves about Thailand is their sense of fun. You know, they're just they're just always ready for a party. You know, it's absolutely incredible. Now, if you look up in a Thai dictionary the word fun, it comes out as sanuk. You know, but actually, I think in Thai culture, sanuk has got a much broader meaning. It's like they've got a saying, you know, if there's fish in the rivers and rice in the paddy fields, then eat well and enjoy your life. It's almost like if you've got the basics of your life, then it's almost like you've got a responsibility to have fun, you know, which, you know, it can make an incredible place. You know, they'll just make a party out of nothing. Or for instance, you know, the Thai New Year Songkran will, you know, under normal circumstances, you know, which obviously hasn't been the state of things for the past couple of years. I mean, it's just the most incredible party you can imagine, you know, and that it kind of like that kind of fun, almost excessive outlook is synonymous with Thailand, and it's a big part of what makes it such a great place for a holiday. You know, it's just you know, if you're looking for fun, you've come to the right place. Now, one side of Thailand, you know, kind of like Thai culture, you know, I've never really appreciated is the way they fawn over money. You know, like sometimes they can be very ostentatious. You know, you get like the wealthy Thais will just sort of go out just dripping with gold. You know, it can, and when you see you know, the kind of ordinary people fawning over the rich people, you know, you know, I don't know, you know, I just find it a bit distasteful, you know, just me personally. I can remember once being on an aeroplane, a Thai Airways aeroplane, and back in the days when frequent flyer schemes were a lot more generous than they are now, I managed to get totally free, well, bar taxis, a first class flight, London Bangkok, Bangkok London, you know, which was great. I had seat 1A. And I can remember on the return leg, I was in the first class lounge. You know, it was this huge lounge at Suvarnabhumi airport. And off this big lounge, they're kind of smaller satellite lounges. And I remember there was a military presence in the lounge. They you know, there was a military presence guarding a family that were in one of these satellite lounges. You know. And anyway, it turns out these people were on my flight. And when we got on the plane, you know, we sat down, and the hostess came over and she had a chat with me. You know, it's like, well, maybe you don't. I've only done it once, but you know, they in first class they make a bit of fuss of you and they ask your name and everything, get to know you a bit. And after I've been on the plane about 10 minutes, this Thai family came on, and I'm still not sure who these people were, you know, but I think the head of the family was somebody very important. I don't know whether he was a politician or military, but he basically filled up the first class carriage with his family, and we were settling down, getting ready for the flight, and he was talking to the hostess, the same one that had been talking to me, and I heard him say in Thai, why is there a foreigner sitting in seat 1A? And she said, oh, well, he booked his flight a long time in advance. And then he said, well, look, you know, this is the Thai national carrier. surely we should have a Thai person leading the way, sitting up front. And she sort of said, well, you know, like he booked a long time in advance and she was trying to tip him off, she said, and he can speak Thai. And without missing a beat, he just said, no, foreigners don't speak Thai. And you could just tell that this guy, you know, because of his money and his influence, he was just used to reality being exactly what he said it was. and you know, it didn't matter that she said I could speak Thai, she was wrong. He just said, no, you're wrong, you know, he can't speak Thai. You know, and that kind of, you know, you see a lot of that kind of arrogance, you know. And it seems a bit strange to us Westerners, you know, because most of us Westerners have got a bit in us where we kind of like, I don't care how much money he's got, you know what I mean? I think this, and I wouldn't say you never see that in Thailand, but you just kind of, you see it a lot less, you know. It's just, money just seems to be seen as much more of a good thing, you know, to the extent where, you know, it's almost forgivable to kind of lie and cheat a bit to get money because money is such a good thing, you know. It's sometimes it's a bit hard for us to see it that way, you know. There was an old Thai pop song and some of the lyrics to it were kind of like, I didn't want to love him, but he had money, tens of millions of baht, so I had to love him. Now, to a Westerner, you know, we just wouldn't really resonate with that. But, you know, like, I remember thinking, well, yeah, Thais would just totally understand that, you know. So, look, I mean, you know, money's, I suppose, you know, is a very useful thing and it's something we all strive for. But there's just something different in the Thai perception of it that I just, you know, I'm just not 100% relaxed with, you know. One thing I absolutely love about Thailand, you know, and it's worked for me many times, is it, you know, if you're riding a vehicle somewhere and you get something like a flat tire, you know, or worse, you can usually get it sorted out so quickly, you know, especially out of country. I've had incidences where I've had a blown tire on a motorcycle and I've just literally looked up and across the road there's a sign that says in Thai, you know, Bat Yang, you know, repair tyres, and you just go over there and somebody rolls his sleeves up and repairs it, you know. I can remember one time in the early 90s I was doing a tour up in Nong Khai province and we were up in the mountains bordering Laos, and one of my friends, you know, his chain went on his motorcycle and we were literally stuck in the middle of these mountains. There was nothing around, so I was on another motorcycle, so I rode on ahead. And I think after about 4 or 5 kilometers I came to this sign in Thai that just literally said Motorbike Clinic. So I pulled over and there was a guy in this little hut and I told him the problem. So he got you know, a set of tools together, some odds and bits, and he just like put them in this tray, and he got on his motorcycle, held this tray with his hand on the back of the motorcycle, rode his motorcycle with one hand, and we went through this windy road through the mountains back to where my friend was. And the guy looked at it and he said, well, yeah, your chain's gone because your bearings have gone on your front wheel. You know, he said, I can probably sort it for you, but we're going to have to get you back to my hut. So, you know, what the guy did was he rode his motorcycle with one hand behind his back, holding this toolkit, and he put his foot on my friend's bike and just pushed him round these mountain roads until we got back. And then when we got back to his hut, he just had like all kinds of grease, jars full of grease with bearings in them, and he just, you know, he just fished around until he found one that was the right size, and then he just, you know, he just sat and sorted it out there and then. You know, I think it took like about an hour for him to repair everything, and he wanted, you know, at the end of it was like 200 baht, you know. I mean, it wasn't a lot of money even then, and then after he'd repaired it, he wanted to know that, you know, it was getting late and did we want to spend the night there and have a drink with him. You know, it was just, you know, that kind of thing's wonderful, you know, when you're used to the attitude in England, which is, you know, you phone them up and it's, you know, oh, I don't know, I've got no idea how much it's going to cost, well, we'll have to look at it first, oh no, we can't book you, you can't bring it in tomorrow, you know, well, I think I might be able to fit you in next Wednesday, you know. It's that kind of attitude, you know. it's very refreshing, you know, just being able to get things done that quickly. Another thing that I kind of never quite got used to in Thailand is kind of the way they seem to like some things that, you know, to our eyes seem incredibly tacky. You know, I can remember if you used to be out drinking in Pattaya, they'd come round kind of like these country Thais would come round trying to sell things to the foreigners, and they just have these really obnoxious things like giant cigarette lighters, you know, they're about like 10 inches long or something, you know, just you know, I just couldn't understand why they thought the sort of Westerners would really kind of want that kind of thing. You get that as well sometimes when you look at some of their tourist destinations. You know, I can remember going with some Thais to a tourist destination in Ayutthaya. You know, it was called Ayutthaya Floating Market. You know, but it wasn't. You know, obviously, like a floating market is like a really nice traditional Thai thing, but this one isn't. You know, it's just like a group of buildings in which they've kind of dug a kind of moat to make so they can sort of claim that it's floating. And you know, the place, I just found it just so tacky, you know. Just unbelievable, you know. Another way I find they can be tacky is like, you see here when it's somebody's birthday, you know, sometimes if you're in a bar or something and it's somebody's birthday, they wear these kind of like garlands of money, and the idea is that, you know, you get a banknote and staple it to this garland of money, you know. I guess it gets back to the Thai love and money thing, you know. To me, I've just always found it a bit kind of, you know, like ostentatious, you know, a bit, I don't know, yeah, just a bit tacky, you know. I can remember once I went with a friend, you know, went on a Thai boxing course, and it was a residential course, you know. It was like 10 or 11 days long, and at the end of it, I decided to tip my trainer, you know, a couple of thousand baht. So, you know, instead of just me, I just wanted to give him 2,000 baht and say thanks. But no, he called everybody round, and, you know, we had to have a photograph taken of, you know, like me handing him the 2,000 baht, you know. I'll see if I can find the picture. Conversely though, you know, like, you know, they have this love of kind of tacky and plasticky tourist sites. You know, they can also do some fantastic things, you know, like, you know, if you've watched any of my videos, you see that, you know, that a lot of the places I go to are kind of like temples that are built on these kind of precarious perches high up on mountains and hillsides, you know, and you kind of like, that's one side of it I really enjoy, you know. I just love the idea that the community gets together and, you know, like people donate money and labour to go and build these things, and, you know, and sometimes it just leaves your head scratching in wonder, you know. I mean, you spend half a day trying to get up the top of this mountain, and then you think that, you know, like everything that they've put up there, everything's been built, you know, people took all the materials up there, you know, it was all done with hard physical labour, you know. So I guess, you know, there's a flip side to it, you know. There's the negative side, and like so many things, there's a positive side as well. And another thing that, you know, I really admire about Thais and Thai culture, especially now that I'm getting older, is, you know, their respect for elders. You know, it's just it's a tangible thing, especially up country. You know, you can see the younger people just by default have got a respect for older people. In fact, there's a Thai word, you know, wayawut, which literally translates as superiority in age, and that sums it up really. You know, the way they kind of see age in that positive light. You know, they see age as being a superior thing. You know, I guess they kind of, you know, they're thinking of the experience that people tend to gather through their age. You know, that's one thing that's very nice. Now, another thing that can be really frustrating in Thailand, and I know that so many expats are going to be able to relate to this one, is the Thai love of bureaucracy, particularly paperwork. I mean, sometimes it is just incredible. You know, you can go to renew your visa and they might tell you to bring 3 photocopies of everything, you know, like virtually every page of your passport, every relevant stamp. And I've done it where, you know, you've gathered this big bundle of paper and photocopies which you've annotated, you know, signed, and you give them to them, and then I've actually seen it where they're photocopying my photocopies, you know, and it's just, you know, seriously, they end up with this pile of paper that must weigh a pound just for a you know, like a visa extension or something, you know, and it's you know, it could just leave you scratching in head in bewilderment, you know. I mean, where do they store all this stuff? There must be huge government warehouses, you know. But I suppose, you know, you can see it, you might be able to understand it with something like, you know, they take as important as like immigration, but it still applies if you go sometimes to the national parks, you know. Like sometimes I'll go and I want to camp at a national park and I'll take my own tent, but I just might want to rent a floor mat off of them, or a blanket or a pillow, and you go there and there's just tons of paperwork, you know, and you just you know, at the end of it they're asking you for 20 baht and you just sort of scratch your head and wonder if it's all worth it, you know. They're getting you to sign things, and you know, they're getting all these forms of paper and stapling them together, and if you spend any amount of time here, they'll reach a time where you'll totally relate to what I'm talking about, that's for sure. Now, another thing I've noticed in Thailand, you know, it's not particularly annoying, but you know, it's just something I've noticed over many years, is, you know, just Thai seem to have a very sort of poor idea of time and distance. Yeah, I can remember back in the late 80s or the early 90s, you know, I used to do a lot of travelling with my friends. We'd just go around rural Thailand on buses, you know, and there were just these like slow, rickety old buses, and you'd be sitting with the locals who used to do these journeys quite often, and you'd have no idea when you were going to get somewhere. You know, say you were going to Udon Thani, and you'd ask somebody, and I could speak Thai even then, you'd ask them and you'd say, like, you know, what time do we get there? And they just look at you and they just they wouldn't have an answer, you know. Or you'd say, like, so you try tackling it from another direction, you know, you try sort of asking how far it was and then estimating. So you'd say, well, you know, like how many kilometres, and they just didn't know, you know. And it's just, it's something I still notice to this day. You try it for an experiment, you know, ask a Thai person for directions, and they'll probably say to you, oh, well, you know, you just go up there and it's on the left or something, but then sort of saying, well, how far is it, how many kilometres, and your chances of getting a kind of accurate answer are very slim, let's put it that way. Now, one thing I really admire, you know, particularly in rural Thailand, you know, is how quick they are to offer help, you know, how quickly they will offer to help you, you know. Like I do a lot of walking for exercise around here, and if I happen to be walking beside a road, you know, I can almost guarantee that somebody will pull up and ask me on a motorcycle, or even a car, you know, ask if everything's all right and do I want to lift somewhere, you know. In fact, it reached a stage where I actually will walk on the other side of the road now, you know, just into the incoming traffic, so they don't have enough time to kind of like stop and offer my help, which kind of reminds me, which as an aside, you know, they don't understand the concept of walking for exercise. You know, there's quite often they'll stop and they'll say, you all right, you know, like, why are you walking? And I'll say, well, you know, don't gamlang, you know, I'm just walking. Why don't you ride a bicycle? And I just say, well, I enjoy walking, you know. They don't understand that concept, but they were just so willing to help. I can remember about 4 or 5 years ago, myself and a friend driving flat tyre in the, you know, on this car, literally on the, you know, on the mountain pass, you know, on one of the windy sections. And so I thought, oh well, here we go. So I got the jack out of the back, and the, you know, and the little wrench they give you, and I started like looking for a good place to put the jack. And there was just a little hut opposite, and some guy just comes running out, saw what the problem was, goes running back to his hut, came out with his big industrial sized jack, and he just did the wheel change for me, you know, just totally did it. At the end of it, I tried to offer him some money, and he wouldn't accept a single baht for it. You know, like Thais can be really nice like that, you know, they can be really friendly, really helpful, you know, I've seen that so many times. Another thing that can be a bit shocking to us foreigners, you know, is just kind of how blatant and upfront Thais can be about asking for cash. You know, I've had it not too far from here, you know, where just somebody's seen a foreigner and sort of waved and called hello, you know, which isn't unusual. And he's just come up to me and said, hey look, I need a bit of money for some more drink, and do you have any money, you know? Or I can remember another occasion, a friend of mine got married many years ago in a Utia, and he'd asked me to take care of the money to pay the caterers and the dancers. And at one point in the night he came up to me and said, look Karl, will you count out 20,000 baht and give it to the caterers, you know? So I went out of the reception, I walked into the street, and I got out this wad of money and started counting out 20,000 baht. And this Thai stranger I've never seen before just came up to me and just sort of said, oh, you've got a lot of money, you know, can I have some? Will you give me some? And he was totally serious. I can remember being at a party in northeast Thailand once, where this lady just come up and started talking to me, and she was just being all friendly, and then sort of like very quickly she started telling me about all her problems and how she was having money problems. And then it was, oh, you know, she just latched onto me at this party, and it was, oh, please will you give me some money? And I kind of like, I just gave in to the pressure, you know. I gave her a couple of 100 baht, you know, and afterwards a Thai bloke come up to me, and he just sort of said, oh, did you give her some money? And I said, yeah, you know, she told me, you know, times are hard, and I gave her a couple of 100 baht. And he said, well, look at her, she's fat. He said, she's eating pretty well, isn't she? So I think sometimes even the Thais kind of, you know, like see it as a bit out of order as well, you know, but it's something that can be a bit shocking to us foreigners. Another thing that you hear a lot of foreigners complaining about is kind of like stubbornness. You know, Thais can be so stubborn, you know, especially if they've got some kind of authority. You know, they can just dig their heels in, and once they dig their heels in, you know, they're not going to back up. I can remember a long time ago, you know, a friend of mine got married, and his father and his father's girlfriend had flown out to the wedding, and you know, they just went to the Ampur, you know, they're just the kind of place, the local municipality, you know, where you register marriages and deaths and that kind of thing, births. And he'd gone there, you know, just to just to register the wedding. And for some reason, you know, one of these officials looked at my friend's father's passport, and I can't remember what it was. You know, he found something wrong with it, you know. I really can't remember even what it was, and I just can't see any reason why it should have affected the marriage whatsoever. But you know, they just decided that was it, the wedding couldn't go ahead. And my friend, you know, he got very frustrated, and of course the angrier he got, you know, the more they dug their heels in. In the end, I just said to him, I said, look, you know, let's just go to the next Ampur, you know, the next district, you know, and that's what we did, you know. We just went like 35 kilometres away, and there was no problem whatsoever, and the marriage got registered. You know, sometimes you just have to kind of deal with things that way, but you know, it can be very frustrating. One thing I really love about the Thais is like how non-judgmental they can be. You know, I can remember, okay, like many years ago, you know, I went to a party, in upcountry Thailand. I'd been invited to these parties, and a couple of my Thai friends had said to me, "Oh, there's somebody at this party wants to meet you," you know, and they said this person's name. I can't remember what it was. And, oh, right, okay, you know. So I turned up at this party, and then they introduced this person to me that wanted to meet me, and it was like a lady boy, you know, and it's just like so not my thing, you know. But it was just, it never even crossed their mind to mention to me that it's a lady boy, you know. In the West, somebody would have said, "Oh, you know, somebody wants to meet, but you know, like I tell you in advance, you know, they're a bit different," or something, you know. But you know, to the Thai way of thinking, it wasn't even anything that was worth mentioning. You know, they're great like that. Also, you know, things like age differences in relationships, you know, they're just kind of like, you know, just very tolerant and non-judgmental, you know, and that could be really nice. So I think in conclusion, you know, like Thailand is just one of those places, you know, it can just totally amaze you, it can just leave you frustrated, you know. I mean, I've seen, you know, I still see things on a regular basis that just leave me scratching my head, you know. I mean, I've been in Thailand, you know, either as a visitor or living here every year for the past 34 years, and I still see things every month that just leave me scratching my head, you know. Just, did I just see that, you know? But it's never boring, and I think, you know, that if you kind of like learn to not be sort of emotionally reactive, you know, most people really enjoy it. You see a lot of people complain about the place, but you don't see so many of them leaving, you know. That's when I kind of take it seriously, is when somebody sort of is so fed up they want to leave. But you know, like at the end of the day, I think kind of like with Thailand, like actions speak louder than words, and most people really like being here.